sometimes enjoy some of your good humor. I hope you still have it the way I used to know. And I wish to congratulate the Honorable learned friend Gladys Boss for her election as your deputy. Mr. Speaker, sometimes back, there was an opinion poll that held that Kenyans were the most optimistic people around in the world, I think. And you know, 10 years ago, we attended a very colorful ceremony at Kasarani. The ceremony was the inauguration of the Jubilee President and Deputy President, very well conducted by the now Deputy Speaker. And I was sitting next to some prominent Kenyans, and we watched the way Kenyans were watching the presentation of the agenda of government at that time. And I asked my senior colleague of mine who was sitting next to me, what do you think about what do you think about the new government? What do you think about the president and the deputy president? And that senior colleague, who is now deceased unfortunately, said to me, I think these two people will perform very well. And he was very optimistic that Kenya was going to go places. And they actually digitally showed us the Kenya of their dreams. And we were all very hopeful, and we went back home. Some of us went back to our legal practice and waited for the great moments to happen. 10 years later, Mr. Speaker, the successor of President Kenyatta had this to say. He says, I have news, and it is not very good news. Our financial situation is not very good. Mr. Speaker, the President of Kenya has said that the financial situation is not good. The economy is bad. In fact, the Deputy President has used much clearer words and said the economy is very bad. Mr. Speaker, of course, there are questions that would be asked, that we would like to ask, as to how we arrived at this situation, from a situation of optimism to a situation where we have now declared our economy to be very bad. We would have loved to do some postmortem on what actually were the causes of this situation. But I don't know whether that would help much. The situation as we find it now requires our attention. And this parliament should consider itself not as a war government or as a constitutional government or parliament, but in fact as a parliament that must sort out the economy. And more than anything else, the thing that will pain us, the things that we must set us to scratch our heads is how to bring back the economy to shape, because we aren't doing any good. The many things that we promised our people on the campaign trail depend on the economy. And unless we sort out the economy, there is very little else we are going to do. So we now wait for the government to present to us their economic policies to see what can be done differently. Because what I know, Mr. Speaker, is that most of the people who are in the Jubilee government are also in this government. The only consolation we have is that I hear that the president is very well advised by economists. I hope these economists will now crack this nut and tell us what ought to be done so that we can come out of this conundrum